I was the bride that night trapped in lace, satin, and nerves when my new mother-in-law set the cake knife down with a soft but deliberate click and announced loudly enough for every guest to hear, "You will always be second best in this family." The vineyard lights shimmered in the dusk, casting warm gold over the stunned faces that turned toward me, waiting for me to crumble, to break, to shrink. I didn't. I lifted my veil with slow, steady fingers, letting the silence ripen between us like overripe fruit. Then I said calmly, almost gently, "Second best to you, maybe. But you have no idea what my mother left me, or how it's about to change everything you think you control." A ripple of gasps swept through the tables. People leaned in. Wine glasses paused mid-air. The Spencers had always believed I was nothing more than the quiet nurse Daniel married, simple, meek, grateful. They were wrong, because nestled deep inside my bouquet hidden beneath white peonies and eucalyptus was proof that would turn the entire Spencer family upside down. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 29, a nurse in Portland, Oregon. Most nights I move through bright fluorescent corridors, my sneakers squeaking over dull linoleum, my mind too tired to think beyond the next patient's chart. Bills stalk me everywhere I go: student loans, unexpected car repairs, a credit card I swear I'll pay off next month. Reality clings to me like the smell of antiseptic on my SC. Daniel, my husband, comes from a world that might as well be a different planet. The Spencers own vineyards across the Willamette Valley, land that seems to breathe wealth. Their surname is embroidered on wine labels and whispered at charity galas. The first time I stepped onto their estate, the air smelled like aged oak and old money. Portraits of ancestors, stern and dignified, lined the hallways, gazing down as if assessing whether I deserved a place there. His mother, Margaret, smiled at me with impeccably painted lips, but her eyes passed over me the way one glances at a lamp or a side table and object. Not a person. To every guest she introduced me as Daniel's nurse. Never Claire, and she never missed a chance to compare me to Olivia Whitmore, the poised, polished banker's daughter Daniel once dated, the one she clearly thought he should have married. At dinners she'd swirl her wine and ask, "Have you heard from Olivia lately?" Like she was tossing a dagger wrapped in silk. Daniel would clear his throat. I would sit still, pretending the sting didn't land. It wasn't the first time I'd been invisible. Growing up, I was the second child, the afterthought. My older brother received everything: new bike, clothes, praise, while I inherited the leftovers. When he brought home a C, my parents said, "He's trying." When I brought home straight A's, they said, "As expected." The day they forgot me at soccer, practice left on the cold metal bleachers until dusk, I learned early what it felt like to be second, unchosen, unseen, unimportant, only. My mother noticed me. She worked long shifts at a diner, always smelling faintly of coffee and fried onions, but every night she made space for me. One winter evening she placed a small wooden music box in my hand's dark walnut, carved with tiny flowers. "When someone tries to make you feel small," she whispered, "remember what's inside this. Someday it'll protect you." I didn't understand then. I do now. Years later in the Daniel rushed in with a collapsed coworker. Afterward, he insisted on buying me coffee. He asked questions not out of politeness but genuine interest. For the first time in ages, I felt seen. When he proposed, I believed love would bridge the chasm between our worlds, but it didn't. Single quotes at our engagement dinner, Margaret lifted her glass not to us but to the Spencer legacy. She seated Olivia beside Daniel as deliberately as placing a queen next to a king. Their laughter blended like a duet they'd practiced for years. I ate roasted salmon and lemon risotto that tasted like ash. Wedding planning was another battlefield. The Spencers selected the vineyard, the quartet, the caterer, the seating chart. They left me decisions that didn't matter: napkin colors, shoe height. When I suggested a photographer I adored, Margaret waved a manicured hand. "He's not timeless enough for our family." She even slid a prenup across the table, calling it standard procedure. Daniel insisted we didn't need it. But I saw the flicker of hesitation, meanwhile. I worked double shifts to pay for what little was mine. I bought my dress on clearance, hemmed it myself past midnight. I skipped lunches to save money for flowers. The Spencers paid for everything on their side, proudly calling it the family fund. A door never opened for me. Thanksgiving was another reminder of where I stood. Margaret carved the turkey while praising Olivia, her career, her glow, her natural elegance. The guests exchanged uneasy glances. Daniel squeezed my hand beneath the table, but nothing could silence Margaret's voice drowning out mine. Whenever the world closed around me, I touched the music box hidden in my knitstand, ran my fingers over the carved petals, wound its key just to hear the soft, haunting melody. My mother's voice threaded through the notes. Don't let them write you out of your own story. One night, while we finalized the wedding menu, I overheard Margaret on the phone. Olivia was always the one. This girl, she's temporary. Second best. Then she laughed, sharp as broken glass. Standing in the dark hallway, something in me tightened. I whispered to myself, not this time. That night, for the first time since my mother's funeral, I lifted the lid of the music box. Its melody spilled out fragile, trembling before the lid creaked shut. I wasn't ready yet, but soon I would be. The weeks before the wedding blurred into exhaustion. Hospital mornings. Spencer demands at night. At the engagement party, Margaret turned humiliation into spectacle by inviting Olivia, seating her beside Daniel again, as if rehearsing an alternate version of my life. Every toast circled back to the Spencer legacy. Margaret's smile told me she believed I wouldn't fight back. The bridal shower was another wound wrapped in ribbon. Guests gifted crystal frames, monogrammed towels, luxury cookware. Margaret handed me a tiny box containing a plain white apron embroidered with "Practice makes perfect." Polite laughter floated through the room. I smiled too, swallowing humiliation that tasted sour that night. I buried the apron under sweaters and stared at the stitched words until they blurred. I began saving everything: screenshots of messages, receipts for every expense I covered, emails where Margaret signed off decisions as if I didn't exist. At work, while charting vitals, I whispered, stay calm, observe, wait. Then came the rehearsal dinner, golden lights draped over the vineyard like a crown. Guests filled tables of ivory linen. I sat beside Daniel, playing the role of someone who belonged. Margaret, radiant in silver, commanded every corner of the room. And then Olivia arrived, pale silk, effortless grace, familiar laughter. Guests whispered her name like a prayer. Olivia, darling, sit here, Margaret said, patting the seat beside her. Daniel stiffened but didn't stop it. Cold crept under my skin. During dinner, Margaret's voice floated above the chatter as she praised Olivia's charity events, her public speaking, her sophistication. My fork scraped the plate. I kept my face composed. Then the slideshow began. Daniel's childhood vacations, graduations, milestones. And suddenly a photo of Daniel with Olivia at a winter ball. Her hand tucked inside his arm. Laughter sharpened around me. Margaret clapped softly. Oh, what a memory! Heat stung my cheeks. I excused myself and stepped onto the patio. The night air slapped me awake. I reached into my clutch and held the music box beneath the moonlight. I didn't open it, I just needed the weight of it. The door opened behind me. Ethan, Daniel's cousin, stepped out. Face serious. You don't deserve this, he said quietly. My guard rose. What are you talking about? He hesitated, then leaned in. I've overheard things. Plans your mother-in-law has made. You need to see something. After the wedding? I studied him. No pity, no smugness. Just truth. Why tell me? Because I'm tired of pretending this family is what it pretends to be.
Inside.
Margaret's laughter floated again, sweet. Poisonous. I closed my fist around the music box until the carved petals left imprints in my skin. That night, lying awake beside Daniel, everything replayed in my mind: the apron, the slideshow, the whispers, the laughter. It formed a pattern as clear as ink on paper. Erase me, replace me. Repeat. But in the silver glow of moonlight, the melody from the music box echoed in my mind. My mother's voice whispered through it. When someone tries to make you feel small, remember what's inside. I didn't know yet what waited beneath its velvet lining. But I knew I was done being small. The wedding morning broke gray and cold. Fog rolling over the Willamette Hills like a warning. From my dressing room window, rows of vines shimmered with dew-controlled, perfect, manicured. Just like everything Margaret touched. I slipped into my satin gown, adjusted my veil, and tucked the music box deep into my bouquet. Its weight steadied me like armor. By evening, the hall glittered with candlelight. Guests clinked glasses, laughter rising beneath the vaulted ceiling. Margaret glided through the room in a jeweled gown, glowing with triumph. Daniel smiled at me, but his eyes kept flicking toward her. When the cake was wheeled in, the chatter hushed. Margaret walked forward, one hand on the knife, and in a voice meant to reach every corner said, "You'll always be second best in this family." A collective gasp cut through the music. Forks froze mid-air. I met her gaze, my pulse strangely calm. "Second best to you, maybe," I said. "But y'all have no idea what my mother left me or how it will change everything," murmur spread. Daniel blinked. Stunned, Margaret's smile faltered. I turned and walked out, bouquet in hand, through the hull of whispering guests. In the bridal suite, I set the bouquet down and opened the music box. Inside lay my mother's folded letter and an iron key tapped underneath. Her familiar handwriting steadied me. "If you're reading this, you're facing people who would rather raise you. Remember, your place here was paid for long before they decided you didn't belong." Attached was documentation of her investment in the vineyard made years ago with Daniel's late father, proof that I owned part of what they called their legacy. When I returned, Ethan was waiting near the projector. Our eyes met. He gave a small nod. The lights dimmed. The slideshow flickered, then changed. A recording played Margaret's voice, crisp and undeniable. "She never be one of us. The prenup will cut her out. Olivia Wasselway's the right choice." Gasps swept the room. Daniel's jaw tightened. Margaret's frozen color draining from her face. "That was taken out of context," she stammered. "No," Ethan said evenly. "That's exactly what you said." I lifted the music box, the letter visible in my other hand. "My mother saw through this long before I did," I said. "She left me her shares in this vineyard. I'm not second best. I'm part of this place whether you like it or not." The hall erupted, half shock, half disbelief. Margaret tried to speak, but her own voice still echoed from the speakers, shredding her poise. Daniel looked at Buenas, realization dawning. I stepped down from the platform, my bouquet brushing against my dress. "This tree," I whispered to myself, "isn't tires to write anymore." And for the first time that night, the silence that followed felt like freedom. The next morning, the vineyard was still. The only sound was rain tapping against the glass, washing the glitter and gossip away. Daniel slept beside me, but I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, the music box in my lap, my mother's words looping in my head. "You are not small." By noon, I was driving back to Portland, the fog curling low across the highway. I stopped at the downtown bank, handed the iron key to a clerk, and followed him into the safety deposit vault. Inside the box were neatly stacked papers, ownership documents, signed contracts, proof my mother had invested in the Spencer Vineyard de Catasago. Her handwriting covered the margins, clear and deliberate. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer. She skimmed the pages, then looked at me. "These are legitimate," she said. "They gave you legal stake and leverage." For the first time, I exhaled without shaking. Within a week, I moved out off Spencer Estate and into a tiny apartment above a cafe downtown. It smelled of espresso and rain, and it was entirely mine. The music box sat on the nightstand, the melody softening the hum of the city outside. Then came Margaret's retaliation voicemails laced with faux concern, long emails dripping with guilt. "You're tearing this family apart," she wrote. "Daniel doesn't deserve this embarrassment." I forwarded them all to my lawyer. Soon, news traveled faster than she could contain it. The board at her charity heard their courting from the wedding. Sponsors began pulling back. Margaret Spencer, the matriarch who demanded perfection, was suddenly a scandal. Daniel showed up at my door one rainy evening, shoulder hunched, tie loosened. I didn't know, Hess said quietly. Not about the prenup. Note about Olivia. I should have stopped her. I nodded steady. You knew enough to stay silent. He didn't argue. I'll fix it. I'll cut her off if that's what he takes. I met his eyes. Then start bystanding on your own name, not hers. Ethan texted me updates in the following weeks. Margaret resigning from her charity, losing her seat on the board, relatives distancing themselves. The Spencer's polished image cracked witty open. Through it all, I kept working. Midnight shifts grounded me. Holding a patient's hand, watching a monitor beep, reminded me what real life looked like. Messy, fragile, honest. Every now and then, gossip about me reached the hospital. Gold digger, schemer, liar. I didn't respond. My lawyer's firm sent letters when needed, and silence took care of the rest. By early spring, Daniel moved into a small rental near my place. He sent me scanned documents showing he'd revoked his mother's control over his finances. It wasn't an apology. It was a beginning. One weekend, I drove out to the Ballard property, the little house my mother had bought years before. The paint washed, the garden overgrown, but sunlight poured through the windows like forgiveness. I wound the music box and set it on the mantel. Its melody echoed through the empty rooms, delicate bootone wavering. I hung a spare key on a hook by the door. For the first time in years, the space around me felt light, unclaimed, and finally mine. Spring arrived gently in Portland. The air smelled like wet grass and coffee, and sunlight slipped through my kitchen window every morning. I'd wake early, pour a mug, and listen to the city come and live below my small apartment. The cows was still there. Bill's work worries, but the noise inside me had quieted. The Ballard house was finished by then. I repainted the walls myself, planted lavender in front, and let Thuan carry the scent through open windows. No vineyard, no portraits, no scrutiny, just space that finalibelling to me. One Saturday, Daniel came by with an envelope. He looked older, humbled. Inside were assigned documents. Proof he had severed every financial tie to Margaret and dissolved trust she'd built around him. I didn't know if we can fix us, I said softly. He shook his head. Maybe not, but you showed me what standing up looks like. I had to start somewhere. I poured us coffee. We sat in silence, not as enemies, not quite as lovers, just two people letting go. That evening, I opened the music box again. The familiar tune filled the room, but it sounded different. No longer a reminder of pain, but of strength. I slipped a folded note inside, written in my own hand. Don't let anyone tell you you're small. Don't let them make you second best. Walk away if you must. You'll be fine. I closed the lid, let the melody play, and watched the last light fade across the wooden floor. For years, I thought family meant belonging. Now I know it means respect. And when that's gone, you have every right to leave. So, if you've ever been told you don't belong in your own story, ask yourself, would you stay quiet or would you stand and walk your own road if this story hit close to home? Share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to walk away from your own family to protect your peace? Don't forget to subscribe and stay for more family revenge stories that prevalence can be the sharpest.